Hello and welcome to Life Colours, the revolutionary way to reverse, improve or prevent all the common lifestyle illnesses. Today we're going to be looking at the world's biggest killer, that's heart disease, our orange life colour. Hello, and today we're looking at the orange life colour, which is heart disease. Heart disease is one of the biggest killers in the Western world today. It kills, in Britain, about 200,000 people every year, and nearly 1 million deaths in the United States every year is down to heart disease. In fact, 47% of all deaths that occur prematurely in the Western world are down to cardiovascular disease of some kind. Heart disease actually costs Britain alone £20 billion every year. Now the question has to be, what causes heart disease and what is it? When you look at these two arteries, you can see a beautiful, clean, pristine artery, and next to it you have the artery that is filled with plaque. That means that the blood has to travel through this narrow entry rather than this nice fat space. Now organs don't like the fact that there's not enough blood going to it, so they will make your body push up your blood pressure so that more blood can get through this narrow space. This raise in blood pressure will cause even more problems, as you'll discover in the red life colour. Now, when I was at school, or medical school, there was no way you could get out of medical school without understanding the first signs of heart disease, and more specifically, the first signs of a heart attack. Somebody having a heart attack would have tight chest pain, they'd be feeling hot and sweaty, sometimes they feel quite nauseous, and often that pain will radiate down into their arm and up into their neck and jaw. But I put it to you that before any of that happens, many people have already the first signs of heart disease. Well, this gentleman's known to many of us, Homer Simpson, and I believe that if you live a life like him, you already have the first signs of heart disease. What do I mean? If you're inactive, if you have a poor diet, if you're stressed out all the time, and if you're overweight, smoking and drinking, all of those things or a combination of them will lead to you having already the first signs of heart disease. Many of you would have heard of the Vietnam War. The average age of the soldiers in Vietnam was 19. And the tragedy was that when those soldiers were killed in Vietnam and brought back to the United States, some of the autopsies revealed that they already had massive heart disease at the age of 19. How did they get that? Well, it was lifestyle. I'd like to introduce you to a scientist and doctor who really changed my way of thinking. You see, many years ago, I used to train as a surgeon, and I was one day operating on somebody who had severe heart disease, but several months later, that gentleman had to come back to have another operation because his arteries had furred up again. And my professor was sitting next to me, and he was actually too unwell to have another operation. So he asked us, well, what then can I do? And my professor, who was one of the best minds in cardiothoracic surgery, could only offer him, well, absolutely nothing. He said, there is nothing we can do. That gentleman went home to die. At that point, I figured to myself, there must be something more that we can do for people like this. So I spent a lot of time researching and traveling, and I discovered that there are lots of doctors already doing things to reverse heart disease. And this experiment demonstrates that perfectly. At the Cleveland Clinic, Esselstyn Caldwell took 18 of his severe heart disease patients, people who could really not even walk 10 meters before they got chest pain, and he took them under his wing. When you total the number of cardiac events that they had 8 years before the experiment, they came to 49. And a cardiac event could mean a heart attack, chest pain, stroke. All he did was change their diet. He put them on a plant-based, whole-grain diet, a diet that was low in fat, that was low in sugar, and that was low in salt. Very important that he left out much of the oils, even the so-called good oils. Well, what did he find? Within weeks, their cholesterols were halved. And pretty soon after that, all of the chest pain went away. In fact, for 11 years after the experiment, none of those individuals had any cardiovascular events at all. That is remarkable. But even more remarkable was that over 70% of those patients had a dramatic reversal of their heart disease. Let me show you what I mean. Here on the left, you can see the critical narrowing of an artery. This is what happens when the artery gets furred up with cholesterol, and as I demonstrated before, the blood has to go through a much narrower point. Somebody in this condition would be having chest pain walking even short distances. Here is the after angiogram on the very same patient. Now, if I was back in the hospital and I had finished an operation and I had a result like this, everybody would say, "You've done a fantastic job." But actually, this individual had no operation at all. All they did was change their diet. This is fantastic news, because all around the world, doctors are being told that once you have heart disease, it's permanent and you have to put a stent in. If the stent doesn't work, you have to have an open bypass surgery. But what has been discovered and what is being practiced in many parts of the world today is that a change in lifestyle can reverse the heart disease completely. Many people ask me, well, I thought it was all in the genes. In fact, there was one day I was working in an accident and emergency department, and I had seen a gentleman who had actually survived a heart attack the night before. He was sitting by his bed, and beside his bed were 3 packets of cigarettes. And I said to him, well, are you keeping those as a memento? I mean, you're not going to be smoking anymore, are you? He said, yeah, of course I'm going to be smoking. I'm going out for a smoke right now. I said, but you've just got over a heart attack. You're lucky to be alive. Don't you think you should stop smoking now? He said, why would I do that? I said, well, by changing your lifestyle, you can reduce the risk of getting another heart attack. And he said, no, doctor, none of that. You see, I can tell you why I had a heart attack. I said, why? He said, I had a heart attack because my father had a heart attack. And he had a heart attack because his father had a heart attack. I was always going to have a heart attack. It's just in the genes. And that's what many people believe. They believe that they can blame their parents for their illness. And I always say, if there's one thing you learn from the Garden of Eden, it's not to blame somebody else. You remember the story. God blamed Adam. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent, and the serpent, of course, didn't have a leg to stand on. So going back to heart disease, the reason why this all clogged up for him was because of his lifestyle. He smoked, he drank, he ate lots of fatty foods. You have to ask, though, why should smoking actually cause heart disease? Why should blood pressure cause heart disease? The reason is that when you have high blood pressure, your arteries expand more. And as they expand more, they cause little tears in the lumen of the arteries. So this beautiful looking artery transforms into that artery because there are slight tears in the lumen of the artery. As that tear gets to be repaired by the body, the body lays down some fat. Now that fat oxidizes, and then more fat and more cholesterol gets piled on top. And it's a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a cut, and then putting another one on top, and then another one on top. It just becomes cumbersome, and it then ends up blocking that artery. Also, cholesterol. High cholesterol, especially the low-density lipoprotein, is a great indicator that you are going to have heart disease. And low-density lipoproteins we get in our diet. We eat them. So if you have high amounts of fat or sugar, because sugar is converted into cholesterol, you will end up having high LDL, high cholesterol. Many people who say to me, well, I've been a vegan all my life, I don't eat any cholesterol. How is it that my cholesterol is so high? Well, it gets high because your sugar gets converted into fat, or even your vegetable oils get converted into fat, gets converted into cholesterol. The thing you must do is avoid smoking. Smoking is always bad for your body, and it makes you at such a high risk of heart disease. Now, the purple and blue life colors stand for diabetes and obesity. And they are both implicated in heart disease as well. High levels of blood sugar rapidly increase your risk of heart disease. Sugar in the blood tends to narrow the arteries. Sugar also increases the amount of insulin in your body, and insulin will cause your arteries to grow, to become hypertrophied. And that means that they will narrow the opening through which blood can flow. By avoiding exercise, you will actually increase your risk of heart disease. Most people understand that the more activity you do, the more calories you burn, the lower your risk of heart disease. And also stress. Stress is a factor in actually every life color, and you cannot exclude it in heart disease. The stress or black life color leads to the arteries narrowing artificially, and that means that your blood pressure will also rise. The reason why that happens also is not because of the environment that we're in, but it's how we deal with the environment. You can have two people in the same so-called stressful situation. One will be stressed, the other one will be at peace, and it's down to their personality and their thoughts. Research has shown us that if you have a type A personality, a determined, go-getter, perfectionist type personality, that can predispose you to heart disease. But it's not that part of the personality that's dangerous. The part that is really dangerous is the hostility that goes with that personality. So it's good to be a go-getter, it's good to be a perfectionist at what you do, but it's the hostility part of that personality that can lead you into trouble. So the question has to be, what can we do? Again, as with every life color, before you go into any intervention program, talk to your doctor. Let your doctor partner with you to help you to overcome this illness. If your doctor doesn't believe you can do anything about it, then find yourself a doctor who does believe in it, because there are many about, and they're increasing in number. So here we go, onto the dark orange lifestyle. This is the reversing of heart disease. As we said, we want to go from this narrowing to that open artery. And we can do it simply by lifestyle change. The first thing we need to do is to stop eating cholesterol. The best way to lower your cholesterol is to stop eating it. And we find cholesterol in all the animal foods. Anything that is from an animal has cholesterol in it. Anything from a plant has no cholesterol. So the first thing you have to do in order to reverse heart disease is eliminate all the extra cholesterol you're taking in through your diet. We actually make our own cholesterol. Every cell in our bodies is covered in cholesterol and is essential for health. But when we take in so much, that's when it builds up in the bloodstream. Now, orange, you may remember, is a combination of red and yellow. And that is the same as in the life colours. Red being the high blood pressure life colour, and yellow being the autoimmune life colour, you put their lifestyles together, you would get heart disease. And so if you want to reverse them, it's similar to the combination of the two. So for example, the autoimmune diet, to reverse it, we have to get rid of all dairy products and all meat products initially. That is the same for heart disease. You must also limit the amount of salt in your diet, because salt will increase your blood pressure. And you must limit the amount of sugar in your diet, because sugar will narrow the arteries, again increasing your blood pressure. Make sure you do daily moderate exercise. If you have high blood pressure, it is important that you don't do anything too intense, because that can spike your blood pressure into a dangerous zone. So until your blood pressure is controlled naturally, don't do anything intense. Just do a daily walk. If you walk around 30 to 60 minutes each day, that is sufficient, but that must be on top of your daily routine. So build that into your maybe commute to work, or when you go out with your spouse for a walk in the evening or afternoon. Try and build it into your life so that it doesn't become a burden. Now, this is something quite strange that I also say to people. As in the red lifestyle for hypertension, try to avoid stressful stimuli. Stimuli such as watching the news. The news is always the bad news. That doesn't bring your blood pressure down, it always raises your blood pressure. Try to avoid other stimuli such as caffeine. That will shoot your blood pressure up and increase your levels of anxiety, making your heart disease even worse. And finally, it is vital at the heart of heart disease is making sure that there aren't any bad relationships between you and people close to you. If you feel you have to forgive someone, you need to actively go out and seek to forgive them. That seems like a strange thing to say, but research has found that people, even when people think of forgiving somebody, their blood pressure starts to come down. If your blood pressure comes down, that means your rate of heart disease and risk of heart disease will come down too. Obviously, stop drinking and stop smoking. So we now go on to the light orange lifestyle, which is preventing heart disease. So maybe after a year or so, between 6 months to a year, your heart disease has been reversed. But like many people, it can come back. If your lifestyle slips back, it will come back. So we want to prevent it. Now, in order to prevent it, you can now increase your exercise. As your blood pressure comes down, you're able to do more vigorous exercise. Maybe you can go for a jog or a swim or a cycle. It is safe to do so once your blood pressure is stabilized. Also at this stage, when you're trying to prevent heart disease, it is possible, if you must, to eat meat. Now, I don't recommend it because it has cholesterol in it. But some people feel that they have to eat meat at least once or twice a week. You can do so. I would suggest you go to the lean meats and things like salmon, which still has lots of things that are good for you. And finally, the antidote to that type A personality, especially the parts with hostility in it, is actually goodness. Being good to people. Actively, daily, seeking out ways that you can be good to your fellow human being. It could be a small thing, it could be a large thing, but by doing good things each and every day, you actually end up feeling better about yourself, and the hostility tends to go away. That brings us to the end of the orange life color. I hope you found it useful. Stay tuned for the rest of the life colors, and I hope you can live your life with color. I hope you enjoyed the orange life colour, and I hope it helps you to reverse, improve and prevent heart disease. For more information, please see my book, Life Colours. You can also follow me on Twitter at drchiddy247. But until then, I hope you live your life with colour.